Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. जय श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, यशोदानंदन ब्रज जलरंजन, यशोदानंदन ब्रज जलरंजन, यमुना तीरावनचारी, यमुना तीरावनचारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी, यशोदानंदन ब्रज जलरंजन, यशोदानंदन ब्रज जलरंजन, यमुना तीरावनचारी, यमुना तीरावनचारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी, Radha Madhav ki, Jai Shri Krishna Balaram ji ki, Jai Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we welcome all devotees today for the Saturday Feast Evening Program, and we thank you all for joining us. We will be reading from chapter 9, I believe, from Bhagavad Gita, and we will read text 19. That's what we will have. So I hope you have the possibility of seeing this. So that's good. Hare Krishna. Adi Purush Prabhu? Hare happy to see you, Prabhu. Mindful obeisances. Welcome. Tapamyaham varsham Nigranami utsrajami cha Amritam chaiva mrityuscha Sat asachaham arjuna Tapamyaham varsham Nigranami utsrajami cha Amritam chaiva mrityuscha Sat asachaham arjuna Tapamyaham varsham Nigranami utsrajami cha Amritam chaiva mrityuscha Sat asachaham arjuna. Prabhuji's. Mataji's. Please repeat the transliteration. Tapami. Give heed. Aham. I. Aham. I. Varsham. Rain. Nigranami. Withhold. Utsrajami. Send forth. Cha. And. Amritam. Immortality. Cha. And. Eva. Certainly. Mrityuhu. Death. Cha. And. Sat. Spirit. Asat. Matter. Cha. And. Aham. I. Arjuna. O Arjuna. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Please repeat the translation. O Arjuna, I give heed, and I I withhold and send forth the rain. I am immortality, and I am also death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me. Please hear the purport. Krishna, by his different energies, diffuses heat and light through the agency of electricity and the sun. During the summer season, it is Krishna who checks rain from falling from the sky. And then during the rainy season, he gives unceasing torrents of rain. The energy which sustains us by prolonging the duration of our life is Krishna. And Krishna meets us at the end as death. By analyzing all these different energies of Krishna, one can ascertain that for Krishna, there is no distinction between matter and spirit. Or, in other words, he is both matter and spirit. In the advanced stage of Krishna consciousness, one therefore makes no such distinctions. He sees only Krishna in everything. Since Krishna is both matter and spirit, the gigantic universal form comprising all material manifestations is also Krishna. And his pastimes in Vrindavan as two-handed Shama Sundara playing on a flute are those of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahabharanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaure Krishe Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Padittanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this verse is a very nice verse, and it tells us a very important concept. You will find here that Krishna has already started before these verses to speak about how the various universal manifestations are found in this world. For example, in this verse, he starts by speaking about the Pamyaham. In other words, he says that it is I who give heat. Then he goes on to say, Aham Varsham. That means it is I who cause the rains. Then he goes on to say, Nigranami Utstrajami Cha. And it is I who hold back the rains. And it is I who send forth the rains. So in the beginning, Krishna says, I give heat and I cause the rains. But he also says that sometimes I withhold the rains. And sometimes I cause downpours. And it is true, we are seeing that. Then Krishna goes on to say, Amritam Chaiva Mrityuscha. He says that it is I who is mortality and I am death. It's a very powerful statement, because very often in this material world, if we don't understand Krishna, then we think death is just death. But Krishna declares in Bhagavad Gita, in this verse, in 10:34 also he declares the same point, that I am death, right? I am the devourer of all the worlds. So we must be very careful to understand that even death, which is coming for us, that is also Krishna's manifestation. Which is why devotees, generally speaking, understand, as Srila Prabhupada explained to us, that our whole lifetime is a lifetime in preparation of death. And it is further proven here that Krishna is Mrityu's child. But at the same time, Krishna also says that he is Amritam Chaivam. In other words, he also grants us immortality. And then he ends by saying, Sat Asat Chaham Arjuna. I am matter, I am spirit, and I am the cause and effect at various places. So this is a very important point, because what Krishna tries to say in this verse is that, factually speaking, this entire universal manifestation is connected with the absolute truth. This is the first important principle we have to understand. Sometimes we read so much about the fact that this material world is Mrityu-loka, it is a place of much suffering and strife and quarrel, but we must not also forget that this universe is a manifestation of Krishna. It is a manifestation of his material energy, but his material energy is also his energy. So this is something we should remember. We also understand that when Krishna says he is the sun, he is the heat. When we think about the fact that how important the sun is for us, think about it. The sun is critical for existence in so many ways. If we don't have light, if we don't have electricity, sometimes we think that we have created or we have developed electricity. But if you read the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it becomes very clear that from the 5 primary elements that is created by Krishna, and then later handed over to Brahma in secondary creation, electricity is also part of the ingredients that comes out of it. So electricity is not something very recent. Bhagavatam speaks about electricity for aeons and aeons. And Krishna rightfully says here that heat, energy, all of this is critical to our subsistence. But it is ultimately coming from Krishna. I was reading one lecture on 919 by Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada speaks about Tapami Aham. And he says there, now this is the sun, Tapami. He says Krishna as sun is giving heat. And who is heating this world? Prabhupada says the Lord is heating this world. Prabhupada reminds us, you cannot manufacture a sun. In his lecture, he says, you cannot manufacture a sun. In fact, you cannot regulate rain either. You know, you've heard of cloud seeding and all these things that people are trying to do. But ultimately, Prabhupada says, you cannot regulate rain. That is finally in God's hands. In fact, anything material that is material in nature is ultimately in the hands of God. We are trying very hard to control whatever we can in nature. But we realize that very often nature slips by us. Nature has its own life, so to speak. And if we do not serve Bhumi Devi, who is a great devotee of the Lord, well, then the consequences come upon us. So it is not in our hands, so to speak, to think that we can do whatever we want and then we can control the rain, we can control the sun. That is absolutely impossible. We can't even control our blood pressure. What to speak of rain then? Right? We can't even control our own health. We can't control our own appetites. And yet, we want to think that we are controlling. So, in the beginning of the 9th chapter, you find that Krishna was speaking in terms of positives. You find Krishna using words like, I am the shelter, I am your well-wisher, I am the maintainer, I am your destination. So we see there Krishna affirmatively saying that God, Krishna, is in all of this. But now in 1919, there is a shift. And this is very important. Because Prabhupada, Krishna doesn't just only speak about I am your well-wisher. Now he's looking at the entirety of creation. And in the entirety of creation, it is not always that what is given in creation is positive. The rain can become a deluge, or the sun can become a source of great heat. So therefore Krishna is showing us that even in the terrible heat of the sun, or in the life-giving heat of the sun, both of them are Krishna. So it's very important for us to be able to see the hand of Krishna in the challenges of life as well as in the positive things of life. The general tendency for us when we take up Krishna consciousness is we think that everything will go positive. But if we have been reading Bhagavatam, we realize that very often everything goes anything but positive. There are so many challenges to us in this material world. So we cannot only be thinking that everything that Krishna is doing is inherently positive, because actually Krishna is our well-wisher, but this material world is a product of our desires. And therefore, whatever desires that come into the material world will be met by action and reaction. We cannot escape that. That's why Srila Prabhupada said, it is not that when one comes to Krishna consciousness, the problems of life go away. But it is that when we take up Krishna consciousness, Krishna gives us the ability to be able to develop faith in Him. This is a very important point. When we preach to new people in Krishna consciousness, we don't give them crazy guarantees that the moment you take up Krishna consciousness, your bank balance will increase, your wives will become better, your husbands will change, and whatever else will go. We don't give them these things. But we tell them that whatever challenges that you have, if you have Krishna with you, Krishna will give you the strength to face these challenges. This is a very important point. So we have to understand from chapter 9 itself. I think a little further down, 9:9 and 9:10, Krishna brings up this important quality of Him, which sometimes we forget. Krishna says that He's Udasina but Asina. Udasina. Udasina means, Krishna means that He is neutral. It is a very important quality of Krishna that sometimes we forget. When Krishna says that He's neutral, what He means, and Prabhupada has explained this extensively in lectures, is that Krishna very often in this material world serves the part of a judge. Prabhupada will say that a judge in a high court neither likes you or dislikes you, but according to the actions that you have performed and why you are standing there, it is the duty of the judge to mete out the correct sentence. The judge, it doesn't mean the judge likes you, he gives you lower sentence. But according to the sentencing, he has to either punish you or he has to reward you. This is Udasina. So once we understand that Krishna's transcendental quality is that he is also very detached, he is unbiased, and he is very neutral. In fact, if Krishna was biased, then how is it that so many people in this world who don't believe in Krishna are living, breathing, and sometimes they're doing even better materially than devotees? Isn't it? When you look at all the demons like Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, they seem to have a good time for a while. Krishna could have withdrawn oxygen from them. Krishna could have stopped anything from them. He could have just made them, be finished on the spot. But he's so neutral. He's such a kind father that whether one approaches him with love or whether one is a demon, all the material necessities are equally supplied by him. This is the greatness of Krishna. And this is something we also must learn in our devotional life. Sometimes when we take up Krishna consciousness, we forget that Krishna is in the hearts of also other living entities. Sometimes we become so devotee-centric that we think only with devotees we should behave very nicely. And then when we are with the outside world, we are unnecessarily difficult. And sometimes we don't realize that even. The reason for that is because we do not understand that Krishna's nature is Udasina. And therefore, if we want to follow Anuvrajami in the footsteps of the Lord, we must also learn this. So that's why devotees learn to see Krishna in good times and in bad times. This is the mood of a devotee. And very often devotees do not want anything from Krishna. Vritasura says so nicely, even though he was in the heat of the battle and he was not being given any chance because Indra was favored by the Lord to actually advance and win the battle, did he become negative about Krishna? No. In fact, he says so nicely, Nanaka Prishtam, Nachaparameshtam, Na Sarva Bhaumam, Narasadipatyam, Na Yoga Siddhi, Apunar Bhavamva, Samanjasatva, Virahaya Kamshe. In the sixth chapter, in the last 4 verses of the 11th chapter, 6th canto, last 4 verses of the 11th chapter, these 4 verses are very famous and important verses for us to know. And in that particular verse, Vritasura very nicely points out that I do not claim or do not need or do not want to be master of the lower planets, the higher planets, or even the earthly planets. I have no desire, right, even to go to Dhruvaloka. I do not even want, right, to have Siddhic yogic powers also. Frankly speaking, I'm not interested in being liberated from the cycle of birth and death. But what I want is an opportunity, samanjasatva, virahaya kamshe. What I want is an opportunity to always serve at the lotus feet of Krishna. So this is the mood of a devotee. A devotee doesn't see things as negative. For a devotee, that negative is an opportunity for him or her to actually see the hand of Krishna. Parikshit Maharaj could have become very, very upset with Krishna. He could have thought, Krishna, you saved me in the womb only for me to be cursed many years later by a young Brahmana, impudent Brahmana boy. And I would die in 7 days. Then why save me in the first place? Parikshit Maharaj could have become very upset. He could have lost his faith. But he did not. And in the first canto, 19th chapter, he makes it very clear when he speaks to the sages and the rishis who come. He says that, frankly speaking, he prays that Krishna has so graciously come in the form of a Brahmana's curse, and he has overtaken me. This is the greatness of the great devotees. He did not see the Brahmana's curse as a negative. He saw the Brahmana's curse as the hand of Krishna. He says, Krishna, you have come, but you have come in the form of a Brahmana's curse. This is the mood of a devotee. So Bhagavatam is not meant for us to just read theoretically and then leave it aside and say, no, this doesn't apply to me. We are missing the whole point. If we were to seriously and scrutinizingly study Bhagavatam, the real test of studying Bhagavatam is first of all to hear it, Tat Shranavan, Supatan. Then we have to repeat it and recite it. And then Vicharana Paro. Vicharana Paro means we have to analyze it and we have to put it into practice. Otherwise what happens is Bhagavatam will just remain in the sky. That's how it will be. So Prabhupada makes a point here that a very advanced devotee has the capacity to be able to not see any distinction between matter and spirit. But the fact of the matter is that we are at a level where there will always be a difference between matter and spirit. In the beginning of our devotional service, matter has been created by Krishna to be temporary. And that's a positive if you think about it. Imagine if you're going to fall sick today and you fall sick forever. Because it is material, isn't it? It's going to be very difficult, right? You have a cold for the next 50 years of your life, or you have a fever for 60 years of your life. Imagine, it's very difficult. So therefore, by nature, matter is temporary. It is the mercy of Krishna. Imagine, if you're in a difficult situation and matter is permanent. Good luck to you. And you may think, oh, but Prabhu, I have a very happy life. So it should be permanent, isn't it? But the nature of the world is that wherever happiness is coming, there will always be the resultant sadness. So that is not going to go away. So matter by nature is temporary, but spirit by nature is eternal. Matter will deteriorate, but spirit is ever nourishing. So the more we are connected to spirit, the more we will have tejas, the more effulgent we will become. Remember when Dhruva Maharaj in the 4th canto was performing great austerities. He was remembering Krishna very much in the form of the Lord, in the four-handed form. But when Krishna finally manifested in front of him, life force, and especially my power of speech. And if you look at the word-to-word meaning, it is so nicely given here. Saktidara. Is Saktidara Prabhu here? He's here, right? Yeah, you can see Sanjeevayati is rejuvenate, Akhila, universal, Sakti, energy, Daraha, possessing. So therefore, until we touch spirit like Krishna, our life is dead. It has no meaning. Isn't it true, Prabhus and Matajis, that until we came to Krishna consciousness, when you look back at your life without Krishna consciousness, you do feel like you were like walking dead, isn't it? We were like zombies, We didn't know the purpose of life, we didn't know where we were going around. But after getting Krishna consciousness, our life has become alive. We are really alive. We are alive to our senses. Our senses are there, but they are more keen to serve Krishna. This is the greatness of matter transforming into spirit. So we should not we should not begrudge matter. But Rupa Goswami has taught us how to transform matter into spirit by using it, right? That is Yukta Vairagya. By renouncing everything to be used in the service of Krishna. It's an amazing concept. So we don't walk away from anything. If this harmonium can be used for Krishna, well and good. If it is not, then we don't use it. We are not attached to it, neither are we averse to it. This is very important. So therefore, whenever we speak about Krishna and matter, we have heard of the Virat Rupa, isn't it? And in the 11th chapter, we hear about Krishna seeing Arjuna seeing the universal form also. But it is very clear that even the universal form of the Lord is actually a manifestation of the Lord. It may not be in the same category as the manifestation of the Lord, which is eternally in the Vaikuntha Loka, in the spiritual sky. But if you read second canto of Bhagavatam very carefully, the Virat Rupa is designed as a first step in God realization. It is designed so that the glories of the Virat Rupa will enamor the materialist and maybe even the impersonalists who think that God is simply impersonal. But when they see the grandeur of material creation, they will come to slowly become attracted to it. But for devotees, it is different. Srila Prabhupada one time was taking a walk with his disciples near the ocean when he came to the cliff. And there was a very beautiful view of the ocean. And suddenly his disciples were saying, how wonderful is this creation of God? And Prabhupada said, yes, it is very wonderful. But how wonderful must be the creator of this creation? So Prabhupada very expertly moved his disciples from seeing matter to understanding the energy and the supreme personality behind the glories of matter. This is the expert instructions of the Acharya. And that's why we are very, very grateful to Srila Prabhupada. And that's why devotees don't make a big deal of living in the material world. We know it is there. We know it's going to be difficult. No one can escape birth, death, old age and disease. Prabhupada was in Calcutta when the bombs were dropping. And one reporter said, now you are facing death, Swamiji. And you must also understand that in Calcutta and in India, the mortality rates are very, very high. People are dying all the time. But in the West, the mortality rates are not so high. What have you got to say? And Prabhupada coolly said, mortality rate is 100%, whether in East or in West. It's always 100%. Isn't it so? Can you really tell me anywhere in the world someone has a mortality rate of 50%? He's going to die anyway. There's no one in this center at the moment who's not going to die. I'm not saying now, but at some point, it's going to happen. So therefore, we must embrace that this material world will be what it is. Do not become bewildered by the material world. Get on with our spiritual life. How long we are going to use this material world and the problems of the material world as an excuse not to continue to increase our devotional service. Sometimes we want the perfect condition to execute devotional service. Prabhu, I have a 2-year plan. One devotee once, many years ago, he told me, my plan for Krishna consciousness is 4 rounds in this life. 4 rounds in the next life. And then another 4 rounds in the 3rd life. And by the 4th life, I will complete 16 rounds. It's impossible. We don't even know which life we are going to in the next life. What happens if we end up being hogs? It's going to be a bit difficult, isn't it? Therefore, the urgency is to understand that matter is temporary, life is temporary. We must get on with it. So that's the first point. The second point we must understand from this verse is the all-embracing nature of Krishna and his energies. As we heard from Krishna, Krishna gives heat in summer. If you are in India, Singapore is crazy weather actually. Singapore has only 2 seasons, right? There's only rain and shine. That's it. So it's very, very hard to understand this. But if you are in India or you're in other places, you realize that when the heat is there, it is really hot. And when it's raining, like now it is rainy season, right, in some parts of India, it doesn't stop raining. So therefore, Krishna, Surya is a manifestation of Krishna. And Indra is also a manifestation of Krishna. But they can be pleasant or they can be unpleasant. But both we have to accept. What is that verse? Is it 214 or 241? Matra sparsas tu kaunteya? 214. Situshna dukha dukha. Is it 241?
214.
214, right? Yeah, it's 214. Yes. In 214, Krishna makes it very clear. If you see 214 nicely, go down to the translation. Krishna says that the non-permanent appearance, see the word non-permanent, this is matter. Appearance and non-appearance, appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, or saranyam, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. This is a very important point. If we want to really understand that Krishna is heat, and Krishna can be very hot, or Krishna is cold, and Krishna can be very cold, we must learn to tolerate it. Just like in life, there will be so many ups and downs. The devotee who tolerates it by seeing the hand of Krishna, that devotee ultimately is more Krishna conscious, rather than the devotee who counteracts it and fails to see the hand of Krishna. That devotee becomes disturbed. So it's very important for us to understand that. In fact, if you remember, like in Govardhan Leela, for example, right? Suddenly Indra decided to take matters into his own hands, and he decided very, very unusually to bring the Samvartaka clouds, which were the most powerful clouds that would come at the end of creation, annihilation. He decided to dispatch that kind of clouds to Vrindavan. So the rains that came after that were horrendous, and the residents of Vrindavan were in so much difficulty. But despite being in difficulty, they did not curse anyone. They all ran to see Krishna. And they said, Krishna, Tvam Nata Sharanam Mama. You are the source of our shelter. No one else can be the source of our shelter. We therefore surrender to you. But the point is, sometimes, even though rain is controlled by the Lord, the rain deity himself may think, I am in control. Like Indra. Indra thought he was in control. And when he saw that the residents had given up all that they were supposed to be doing for him, and instead started doing all their sacrifices to please Govardhan, he became upset. In Bhagavatam, in the 10th canto, 25th chapter, he starts saying so many things. He says, the reason why these residents of Vrindavan are behaving like this is because they have surrendered to an ordinary boy known as Krishna. That's what he says. He says that this Krishna is an ordinary human being. I think it's in text 3. He's an ordinary human being. And thus, they have offended the gods, meaning him. Then he goes on to the next shloka. He says, their taking shelter of Krishna is just like a foolish attempt of men to abandon transcendental knowledge of the self and instead try to cross the great ocean of material existence. He's speaking Bhagavatam, but he's speaking it at the wrong place. He has forgotten his place, and yet he's speaking Bhagavatam. In text 5, he says, these cowherd men, they have acted inimically towards me by taking shelter of this ordinary human being Krishna, who thinks himself very wise, but who's simply a foolish, arrogant, over-talkative child. Indra is in big trouble now. But he's the rain, and he thinks he's very powerful. Then he tells the Samvartaka clouds, I will follow you to Vraja. Because the clouds were hesitating. They were saying, actually Indra, this is not the time for us to come, right? This is not the scope of our job. I don't think we should be doing this. But then Indra said, don't worry. I'm coming with you to Vraja. You go ahead. And then I'll come on my elephant Airavata, and I will take the swift and powerful Maruts, the wind gods, and we will decimate the cowherd village of Nanda Maharaj. Just imagine. But Indra was checked by Krishna. Right? We also are checked by Krishna. Whenever we think we are so powerful because materially we have so much of achievements and accomplishments, when the Devatas think that they really control the God, they control the rains, they control the sun, then in this case, Krishna decided that this whole disturbance is actually caused by Indra. He says actually in 10:25:16, he says that these demigods, these Devatas, they should be in the mode of goodness. But instead of being in the mode of goodness, they have now acted very much in the mode of ignorance. Then he says nicely that actually if the Devatas are in the mode of goodness, this false pride of considering oneself to be supreme should not affect them. This is a very nice statement from Krishna. Because pride is a big challenge in this material world. And Krishna declares that if we really want to be on the platform of at least Sattva Gun, so that we can launch into Suddha Sattva or Vishuddha Sattva, at least we should understand that we should not be endowed with pride. Because pride is the cause of our downfall. And I think Krishna says that those who have this false prestige, they will be bereft of goodness. Isn't it? He says they will be bereft of goodness. So now Krishna says, my purpose is to bring them relief. Not only Vrindavan residents relief, but Indra also should get relief from this ignorance. And now in 10:25:18, he says so nicely this point. Tasman mat sharanam gashtam mannatam mat parigraham gopaye swadma yogena soyam me vratahahita. The meaning is very nice. I must therefore protect the cowherd community by my transcendental potency. Why? Because I am their shelter. Shelter. You see the word shelter here? The word shelter is given as Gopaye, I shall protect, Mat Sharanam, having taken shelter of me. And then he says, I am their shelter. I am their master. And indeed, they are my own family. After all, I have taken a vow to protect my devotees. So when we see the great cosmic material creation of the Lord, we should be humbled by it. We should not we should not exploit it, and we should not become falsely proud, because it is not ours to be falsely proud of. It is Krishna's, and we should humbly accept it as the glory of his creation. This is very important. Indra missed it, and therefore Krishna had to come and check it. And we must be very careful. And in the purport, it is very nicely stated. The word Mat Sharanam indicates not only that Lord Krishna is the sole shelter of Vrajajana, which is the devotees, but he also had established his home among them. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is quoted by saying, Sharanam actually means home, and Sharanam also means protection. How nice. You know, sometimes we think of Sharanam as we must surrender and we are protected. But there is a more personal aspect to Sharanam. Sharanam means we think of the Lord as we are his family members. And therefore, if we are in his house, we are always protected by him. This material world is the house of Krishna. And if we understand that, then how will we live in a house which is the house of our master or of our Lord? We will never take something that doesn't belong to us. Or if we use it, we'll always know that I'm a caretaker and I cannot exploit it, but I must use it in the service of Krishna. Then we will be very careful. That's why Srila Prabhupada was very particular about details. For example, if you left the room and left the light on, Prabhupada would become upset. He did not like it. He felt that if no one is there, why should Krishna's electricity be wasted? Prabhupada was very careful about everything because he understood that everything, he realized that everything is Krishna's. If he wanted to make calculations of what was the daily expenses, sometimes if he would get mails, isn't it? In those days, no WhatsApp, no TikTok, nothing. Prabhupada would just, imagine Prabhupada getting TikTok, that would be crazy, isn't it? Prabhupada got mails at that time. So he opened it, but he wouldn't tear it open. If you hear Sudhakirti, you hear Hari Sauri Prabhu, they will tell you that Prabhupada was very careful to open the letters with the letter opener. I think this younger generation doesn't even know what a letter opener is actually, right? They've never opened a letter. They haven't written a letter. So you open it this way and it comes out, right? And Prabhupada would not throw away the letter, what do you call the envelope? He wouldn't. He would turn around and then he would write the expenses for that day on the envelope. Because it is Krishna's energy. Why waste it? So you can see from the example of these acharyas, even a negative example like Indra, how important it is to recognize that the rain may be very powerful, but the rain itself has no meaning and no potency until Krishna is there. That's why in 6.9.25 of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Devatas affirmatively say something very important. They say, Ya Eka Isho Nijamaya Raja. No, Ya Eka Isho Nijamaya Yanaha Sasarjayena anusjama vishvam vayam nayasyapi puraha samihitam Pashyamalingam prita ishamaninaha. Pashyamalingam prita ishamaninaha. This line is very important. Very, very important. And why is this important? Look at the first line of the purport. Prabhupada gives an amazing point. What's the first line? Here is an explanation of why the conditioned soul cannot see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Why? Pashyamalingam prita ishamaninaha. We are always thinking ourselves as separate and independent of Krishna. The moment we have this independent thinking, the moment we think I'm separate from Krishna, I'll do what I want. The moment Indra thought I'm separate from Krishna, I'll do what I want. The moment Brahma thought he was separate from Krishna, I'll steal the boys, I'll steal the calves. The moment that happened, right, then they become separate from Krishna. And imagine, Prabhupada says, a spark that comes out from fire, initially it has the same qualities of heat like the fire. But when the spark stays out too long from the source of the fire, it loses all the qualities of fire. So if we do not use what is given to us in the connection with Krishna, then like sparks which are too far away from the source of the fire, we will also lose touch with Krishna. And the problem in this material world is we don't even realize it. That is the challenge. That is why we need sadhu sangha. We need each other to help us. That is why sadhu sangha is the way for us to understand and realize Krishna. So the devatas accept it. So this is the heat, this is the rain. Then Krishna says, I am Amritam. Krishna is immortality. In a lecture, Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna is saying, I can give you eternal life. That is Amritam. Actually, nobody can give eternal life except Krishna. You remember how Hiranyakashipu came to Brahma and asked him to make him immortal. And Brahma said, I've got news for you. I'm not immortal. So how can I make you immortal? If I have $5 in my pocket, I cannot give you $6. I can only give you 5. So Brahma recognized his limitation. And that is why Hiranyakashipu took out his insurance policy. You remember his insurance policy? This cannot happen, that cannot happen, but it all went away, isn't it? But the point is, that only Krishna can give us eternal life. He can give us true eternal life. Sometimes it is stated that the devatas are immortal because they drink Amrita Sanjivani. But they don't realize that the Amrita Sanjivani is coming from Dhanvantri. Dhanvantri is the personality of Godhead's plenary portion. And actually he is the holder of Amrita Sanjivani. So even when the demigods speak of Amrit, by way of a beverage, it is still coming from Krishna. It is not coming from somebody else. The Devata Soma may make some beverage which is almost alcoholic. They have alcohol there also, but it's a different kind of alcohol, I think. But it cannot make you Amrit. If you remember the churning of the milk ocean, and they were chasing after Amrit, it was Dhanvantri. It was the form of the Lord that came and presented Amrit. Prabhupada writes in the purports of Bhagavatam, that when we speak about Krishna giving Amrit, not only can he give you everlasting spiritual life, but for the devatas, he's so kind to them, he can give them very, very long life, such that they are almost immortal. And that's what he does actually. But Brahma, Shiva, nobody on their own can actually give this. You remember the episode of Maya Danava in the 7th canto, 10th chapter, right? In that chapter of Maya Danava was a very powerful demon. He had learned the art of Amrita Sanjivani. He had learned it. And Prabhupada in one lecture says that even though Maya Danava could have grasped the mantra of Amrita Sanjivani, that ability for him to be able to use that mantra was also the result of Krishna's energy. That is also Krishna's sanction. Because without Krishna's sanction, nothing can move in this world. Even the demons cannot do what they are supposed to do. A robber cannot rob a bank without the sanction of Krishna. He may think, I can do it. But if Krishna decides on that day he gets a heart attack, then he can't rob a bank. Isn't it? So again it comes back to Krishna. So it's a very important point. Maya Danava thought he was in control of the situation. You remember? He built 3 large cities of iron, gold, and silver. Right? They were known as Tripura. And then what happened was, from there, he gave these three cities what we call the invisible shield. You know, nowadays in science fiction, you see spaceships going and then they cloak themselves, right? In Bhagavatam, that was already happening. Mayadanava had cloaked his cities, and they were large, they were like battle destroyers in the sky. So big, but cannot be seen. And from there, the demons started attacking the Devatas. And they were very encouraged by Mayadanava. So all the Devatas went to Lord Shiva. And they told Lord Shiva, you have to help us. And Lord Shiva said, don't worry. He came to the battlefield and he put a very powerful bow, right? And he put an arrow to his bow and he shot a tremendous weapon. But when the weapon went across and when it tried to hit the cities, it failed. It couldn't do any damage. And Lord Shiva, Bhagavatam says, became morose. He became morose. When Krishna realized that Lord Shiva, his great devotee, was morose, he came to his rescue. And he said, let me handle this situation. So Lord Krishna then called Brahma and said, Brahma, now let us go on a mission. I will become a cow and you will become a calf. Don't ask me why he wanted Brahma to become a calf. Someone asked me this. That's up to Krishna, isn't it? Right? We can't say why he wanted him. Krishna wanted some company, so he brought Brahma. So midday, Bhagavatam says, at midday, the cow and the calf entered into the cloaked city. And they walked in. As they walked in, Bhagavatam says, nobody stopped them. Because Krishna's illusory energy was so powerful, the demons saw this cow and calf walking in the city, and nobody thought it was unusual. Normally you will never see cows and calves where demons are. But suddenly there was a cow and calf, and it was walking straight to this point where there was a large pool. Now what has happened before that was, as Lord Shiva was shooting arrows, the demons were being hit. As they were being hit, they would die. And then they would all turn to Mayadanava and say, Mayadanava, save us. Mayadanava built a pool. And then he put water into the pool. And then he touched the pool and gave the pool the touch of Amrita Sanjivani. And he thought he was in control of that nectar of immortality. So he said, throw all the dead bodies in the pool. And when they came out, Bhagavatam said, they became even stronger than before. Imagine the power of the Sanjivani. So what happened was, Lord Shiva thought, this is a terrible situation. So what did the cow and the calf do? At midday, they walked to the pool. And Brahma and Krishna started drinking the water. And they drank and drank and drank and finished all the water. Something that you and I can never do. Right? And they finished everything and then they walked out. And they walked out very calmly, very peacefully. But as they were going out, the demons realized what had happened. And they all turned to Mayadanava. And they said, Mayadanava, the cow and the calf, something is wrong. And they took their arms in battle and they were prepared to fight. When Mayadanava told them, stop, don't do anything. And they thought, this is very unusual. Mayadanava, the great demon, he is the one supplying Amrita Sanjivani. Why is he stopping these two cow and calf? Why can't we kill them? Why can't we do something? And by then they had left. And then Mayadanava says in 7:10:64 of Srimad Bhagavatam, something which affirms why Krishna says in 9:19 of Bhagavad Gita that he is Amrita. He says so nicely, Deva Suro Nara Anyova Neshwara Stita Kaschana Atmananyasya Vadishtam Daivena Pohitam Dvayayo. The word Daivena is very important here. Daivena means which is given by the Supreme Lord. Which is given by the Supreme Lord. We are all under his Daivena energy. We are like puppets in the hands of the Master. And Krishna is the Master. But look at the translation. Mayadanava told all the demons, what has been destined by the Supreme Lord for oneself? We cannot read it. What has been destined, read it together. What has been destined by the Supreme Lord for oneself, for others, or for both oneself and others, cannot be undone anywhere or by anyone, whether one be a demigod, a demon, a human being, or anyone else. Now the purport is very short. But what is nice about the purport is, Prabhupada actually gives, he paraphrases what Danava is saying in the purport. Let's read it. The Supreme Lord is one, Krishna, Vishnu Tattva. Krishna expands himself into Vishnu Tattva, personal expansions, Swamsa, who control everything. Danava said, however I plan, you plan, or both of us plan, the Lord has planned what is to happen. No one's plan will be successful without His sanction. Now here, Prabhupada, we may make our own various plans, but unless they are sanctioned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, they will never be successful. Hundreds and millions of plans are made by all kinds of living entities, but without the sanction of the Supreme Lord, they are futile. Isn't it one of the most powerful verses and purports in Bhagavatam? And this is what we mean by Krishna is in full control. That is why Amritam is actually His. Danava realized at the end of that episode, who am I to give Sanjivani? The source of Sanjivani is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And today He has revoked that source from me. He had given it to me, and I've used it. But today, by His desire, it has come out, and He has revoked it. You see the point? So, Danava's point is very important for us. He may be demon, but he speaks good Bhagavatam actually. And this is a very good point. So, life comes from Krishna. And Mrityu, death also comes from Him. In a very powerful lecture, Srila Prabhupada said this nice point. Krishna ultimately presents Himself to the atheist as death. Interesting point, huh? Because you and I are starting to think, wait a minute, we also die, right? So why is it that He's presenting Himself to the atheist as death? Prabhupada says, God comes before the atheist as death, and He takes away everything. So the atheist thinks that he has everything. But at the time of death, after seeing God, you will be finished. No more understanding. You'll be taken away. Everything, all possession, all scientific knowledge, bank balance, skyscraper, everything will be taken away. Then you will understand what is God. That's what Prabhupada is saying. So this is one level of trying to understand death. So then Prabhupada also asked the question in the lecture, so why don't you try to understand before that moment comes? He's speaking to an audience of mostly atheists. He's saying, Krishna will come as death, and He will take everything away from you forcibly. So why don't you try to understand this point before the moment comes? And Prabhupada says, live very nicely, chant Hare Krishna, see Radha Krishna, eat nicely, and live nicely. Then he says, that is the way. Otherwise, it is not possible. We shall see at the time of death that everything is finished. Then Prabhupada says, in 1034, Krishna says, I'm all devouring death. So Prabhupada then says, one who takes the shelter of the Supreme, he is saved from death. So we are thinking, how is it that we are saved from death? We are all going to die. What does Prabhupada mean? Then Prabhupada himself asked this question. One may argue, you devotees are dying, and the non-devotees are dying. So what is the difference? Isn't it so? How expertly Prabhupada has framed it. And now Prabhupada gives a nice point. He says, there is a difference. A cat catches her kitten in the mouth. And it also catches the mouse in the mouth. Superficially, we see that the cat has caught both the mouse and kitten in the same way. But Prabhupada says there is a difference in the way it is catching. The kitten is feeling pleasure. Oh, my mother is carrying me. Kitten feels very happy. The mouse is feeling death. Oh, now I'm going to die. Then Prabhupada says, this is the difference. So although both devotees and non-devotees die, there is a difference of feeling at the time of death. The feeling when we are going to die at the time of death is by Krishna's mercy, we know that we will be protected. That's why many devotees who pass on, they pass on in a very blissful manner. Those of you who are doctors or medically inclined, or you've had experience with people in hospice or terminal disease, at the time of their death, 90% of them will pass urine and stool, and it is out of fear. I spent time in the hospice for many years when I was much younger, and I remember I was given the chance to read a scripture. So, the Christians were reading Bible, and I had a chance to read Bhagavad Gita. But these people whom I read to were all atheists, But at the last point, they had no one coming. They had no families. They were alone. So we would be called as volunteers just to sit with them so that they feel somebody is there. But some of them, till the very end, they would not want to hear. And it was so difficult for them to pass this word. Many of them would say in the nights, that I see frightening beings running around outside, staying outside, scratching on the wall, making noise. These are the descriptions of Yamadutas in Bhagavatam. But you have seen devotees. Devotees speak of Vishnudutas. Devotees speak of being very peaceful at the time of their leaving. The body may give trouble, but Krishna, like the mother, takes care of the kitten. Krishna is there, but he is also life. And in death, he brings new life to us. This is why he is Amritam, and he is also Mrityu. And that is why he is worthy of shelter. Isn't he worthy of shelter? So we should perceive Krishna not just in the temple as the deity, but we should see him in the creation that we are in. When things are difficult, see the hand of Krishna. What can we learn from Krishna? When things are good, don't take Krishna for granted. Increase our devotional service. When things are good and not good, then do both. And if your time is coming, be in the Sangha of devotees to remember Krishna. So many times we have seen devotees leaving, but somehow or another they are never bereft of Krishna's protection. Never. This is something we should remember. And finally, this other point that is important. In 6.3.12 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Yamaraj tells his Yamadutas. It's interesting, we just spoke about Yamadutas. He tells his Yamadutas, you all have forgotten one very important point about Krishna. Krishna is Otam Potam, Otam Protam. He is the length and the breadth of every part of this universe. You can see in the shloka, Krishna, Yamaraj says very nicely that actually he is like the two threads that form the length and breadth of a woven cloth. The entire world is controlled by him, just as a bull is controlled by a rope in its nose. So we should understand, therefore, that the purpose of such verses in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam is to make us see life differently. The devotees' lenses are different from the materialist lenses. We don't see reversals as difficult. We see them as an opportunity to remember Krishna. And we understand that only with Krishna can we get true Amrit. And if something is taken away from us, please know that that time is up. Everything has an expiry date, isn't it? We also have expiry dates. Our relationships have expiry dates. Our time with each other has expiry dates also. So whatever that is coming is by His mercy. Use it well or we will lose it. And use it for Krishna. Which is why we must go back to the point of the Vrindavan residents. The Vrindavan residents benefited from Indra's pride because they turned a reversal of fortune into a time when 7 days and 7 nights they could actually see Krishna uninterrupted. How amazing was that? It was the most calamitous situation in Govardhan, with rains coming deluge, but it became the source of great sweetness of interaction between Krishna and his devotees. Why? Because for them, he was their shelter. He was Sharanam. He was their shelter. And what is very important is, we must also know Saranyam. Saranyam means one who is worthy of shelter. Sharanam means to surrender. But Saranyam means one who is worthy of shelter. So Saranyam means shelter and Sharanam means surrender. In this world, we are always trying to surrender. Sometimes we don't even realize. When we turn to someone for advice, we are surrendering to them. Right? When we say, Prabhu, please give me some prasadam, we are really surrendering to them. Prabhu, please give me some. Isn't it? We do that. But we don't realize that more important than Sharanam is Saranyam. Who are you taking shelter of? If you take shelter of one who cannot give you shelter, then your surrender, your Sharanam, is useless. But if you take Sharanam of Saranyam, of one who is worthy of shelter, then your Sharanam will be very successful. You see the point? It's very, very important point. Devahuti says this to Kapila Dev in 3:25:11, and we end with this shloka, very nice shloka. 3:25:11. We can chant it together. These shlokas from Bhagavatam, they are so relishable. Is it there, Prabhu? Thank you. Tvam tvagataham sharanam sharanyam swabritya samsarataro kutaram jignyasayaham pragate purushasya namami sadharma vidam varishtam tvam tvagataham sharanam sharanyam swabritya samsarataro kutaram jignyasayaham prakate purushasya namami sadharma vidam varishtam. See what she says. I have taken shelter of your lotus feet because you are the only person of whom to take shelter. That's it. You are the axe, Kutaram. You are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence. I therefore offer my obeisances unto you, who are the greatest of all transcendentalists, and I inquire from you as to the relationship between man and woman, and between spirit and matter. And this is how Devahuti would start the journey of Sankhya Yoga. But her mood of surrender is what we must learn. So always remember these two words. Sharanam is there, but Sharanyam. Who is worthy of shelter? The devotee is worthy of shelter. The pure devotees are worthy of shelter. Our spiritual masters are worthy of shelter. Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas are worthy of shelter. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord of the Universe, Jagannath, He's worthy of shelter. But if we hold on to the tail of a dog to cross the ocean, and we think that just because the dog can go out a little bit and he can come back, and we think, aha, if we hold the tail of the dog, everything will be good, then at some point the dog is going to go down, and we will also go down. This we have to be careful. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Gurudev ki, Ananta Kodi Vaishnavinda ki, Yathai Gaura Premananda. Are there any questions? Yes, Mataji. Is there a mic there?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji.
Prabhu, I wanted to ask about the what you had mentioned about pride. So when I read Prabhupada Nectar and all that, Prabhupada seems to take an extremely heavy stance against pride. And if anybody even has a little bit of pride in their heart, Prabhupada is able to detect it according to their accounts. And he reacts very, very harshly to them, while otherwise he's very loving. I'm thinking that sometimes we feel proud because we are so conditioned to feel proud, and it's such a natural part of the material world, we may not even realize it. So why is Prabhupada so harsh against these devotees when they really don't want to feel proud and they want to feel surrender? Why is that so?
We are assuming that they don't want to be proud. That's an assumption, Mataji. That's a big assumption to make. That's a leap. The reason why the Acharya can see the heart of a person who has pride, for example, if he's heavy with someone because of pride, then he knows that that person actually is cultivating pride in their hearts. That is why he is strict. If that person is accidentally, creating a situation where actually he's not proud, then Prabhupada would not have been so harsh. I know of instances I've read where Prabhupada was kind to devotees who made mistakes, but that's because they were genuinely humble about their mistakes. So if a senior or spiritual master is as hard as a thunderbolt on us because they detect pride in us, it is very helpful. Because the fact of the matter is, it is very hard to say that we are so innocent that we don't know that we are proud. All of us know at some point, whether we want to admit it or not, that we are exhibiting some level of pride because we think we know better than you. And it is very often exhibited when we are critical of people. The symptom of pride is when you criticize. You may not even criticize openly about someone, but you may be having a running commentary on everybody right now in your head. This person looks like that, that person speaks this way, this fellow doesn't know what to do. It's a running commentary going on. But that is the result of your pride. And so how dangerous is pride? Because it leads to criticism. And once we start criticizing Vaishnavas, then the downhill begins. So the Acharyas are very particular. Krishna was very particular to be very heavy on Brahma, on Indra, when it came to pride. So that's because pride is a seriously dangerous thing, and we should not be thinking that we don't know that we are proud. It has to be we should be very careful about that, right? Because subtly, we may think that we know better than someone. I may be preparing for the class, I'm speaking about it. Subtly in my heart, I could think, oh, I know this topic better than any one of you. And that is a problem for my spiritual life. I may be subtly proud. If an advanced devotee can detect it and check me on that, then I will benefit in my devotional service. So that's a good question, but I hope the answer is there. Thank you. Any other points? Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Is the mic available?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, you mentioned that how these verses from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, they give us an idea how does this world is run, how does Lord Krishna's energy works, specifically material energy.
Yes.
And sometimes as devotees, not sometimes, quite often, we are always in the process of trying to look at the world through the lenses, whatever we learn from the scriptures, whatever we hear from the devotees. And sometimes out of our own limitations, we tend to think that now we have understood how does Lord Krishna's material energy work. And that time, even as devotees, Maya tricks us. That we realize, oh, although theoretically I know how she works, but I have been tricked and I have again fallen prey to her. So how do we as a practicing devotees develop a constructive fear, a healthy fear of Krishna's material energy, and how do we grow our faith and love for Krishna?
I think to develop a constructive fear, it is better for us to develop a constructive respect for Krishna's material manifestation. Because when we develop respect for the power of the creation, just like Markandeya Muni in the 12th canto had asked to see the Lord's illusory potency, and when he saw the full strength and might of the illusory potency, and how he was tossed around the waves for thousands of years, and how finally he could see the form of Krishna on a banyan tree, then he realized how powerful the form of the Lord really is. So, the mood of Markandeya was one of appreciation. And in that mood, by the mercy of the Lord, he could come to understand that this is the illusory energy of the Lord. So we don't have to fear this material creation in a negative way, but we can respect the greatness of this creation. But what we should do as devotees is we should be fearful of material association. Just like Devaki Mata was fearful of Kamsa, and Kamsa represented material association, Prabhupada said, we should be fearful to the point where we should be careful about how we take association. That doesn't mean we shoo away everyone who is not a devotee, but we are cautious. Remember the story of the crocodile and the monkey? How the monkey told the crocodile, I keep my heart in the tree, and I don't keep it in me. And Prabhupada said that that's how we should live in this world. Our heart should always be with Krishna. But we have to live in this world. But we should respect that this world is very powerful as a material manifestation. Don't take it for granted. When Yamunaji and a few devotees went to the pubs to chant, Prabhupada tolerated it once or twice. But third time when they came back very late, Prabhupada said, no more. Don't go there. Because the material energy is too powerful. Just come, just after distribution, come back to the temple. That's enough. Is that helpful, Prabhu? Thank you. We should stop here now. I just want to warmly welcome Adi Purush Prabhu. Am I saying it right, Prabhu? Adi Purush Krishna Prabhu. Jai Jai. Prabhu is actually, are you the vice president, Prabhu? Or the president? Okay, you are the co-TP. You are the co-TP of Adelaide, Prabhu? ISKCON Adelaide. So, Prabhu is coming through Singapore now, and he's actually a co-temple president of ISKCON Adelaide. I've been to Canberra, but I've not been to Adelaide yet. And we want to warmly welcome you to Singapore, Prabhu. And we hope that we will be able to take your association. We can arrange to hear you, and we hope we'll be able to serve